my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo. Where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course. And man, it is Thursday, so it means it's time for our Thursday Trends episode. And my guest today helping me dive into all of it, man, he's a friend of the show, a very popular TikToker known as the Storytime Guy. Matt, my dude, how you feeling, bro?
Good. It's great to be on here again. Honestly, I love the stuff you do. So when you reached out, I was like, yes, excited. I love talking about and the things we're talking about today. Very heated about all of the things. It's yeah.
That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear some passion. So I love it. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's one of those weeks. Like there are certain weeks where I feel like I have to kind of like really dig hard to find some stories that, you know, are really important to our community. But this one, I just felt like there was so many things happening over the course of the last week or so that it was like, shit, we're going to try to get to as much of it as we can. So, I mean, with that in mind, man, we'll dive into what's going on in Uvalde, Texas. Of course, that was the place of a horrific massacre at Robb Elementary School. There's still investigations happening. There's been some updates when it comes to the police force over there. So we'll get into that. I'll also quickly touch on a police shooting in Texas that has left a 17-year-old kid in critical condition. We'll get into that. In Los Angeles, you have
my hometown
city council president. Yeah, man. Where you had the city council president resigning after some leaked audio of racist remarks that were just targeted at pretty much everybody.
Everyone got hit with that.
Right.
Yeah, that was
scary stuff. And then we'll also quickly touch on this conversation of chola appropriation, right? Because there had been a lot of conversations with Hailey Bieber posting some new lip product that she had, and I didn't really dive into, but then I was reading some articles that I found to be really, really interesting and important in the way that they tackled this conversation. So I thought it was worth talking about. And then, man, on some positivity, for the first time in a while, we have like multiple positive stories, which is always a good thing.
And on a high note.
Yeah, exactly. So for our Mi Gente segment, man, we'll talk about J.Lo doing some incredible work for entrepreneurs. We'll talk about a Mexican-born woman who is making history in a big way. And we'll also talk about a new SNL cast member that is shaking things up over there, as well as Vanessa Guillen, who was the soldier brutally murdered, sadly, in Fort Hood, Texas. She is getting some recognition, and her story is being told as it should be. So we'll touch on all that, man. A lot to cover today. So without further ado, let's just dive into first some of these heavier stories in a segment we call For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the back. Say it louder for the people in the back.
All right, so let's start in Uvalde, Texas. Just a horrific story that I mean, it hurts to continue talking about it, but at the same time, it's kind of one of those necessary evils almost, where we
need to talk about it.
If you don't speak about it, the powers that be, will kind of allow us to brush it under the rug and nothing ever changes, right? And we need to kind of be, update on what is going on, right?
Yeah.
So what has happened recently is that Uvalde Schools has actually suspended its entire police force, as well as placed 2 school officials on administrative leave. And now this is a school who has their own police force, right? So they've officially suspended them, and this is less than 5 months after the horrific Robb Elementary School massacre that left 19 students and 2 teachers dead. And you also have Lieutenant Miguel Hernandez, as well as the Superintendent Ken Mueller, also placed on administrative leave, and the superintendent actually voluntarily resigned as well. And they're saying that until the investigation is completed, officers that were employed by the district will be given reassignments, and that they're going to be working with the Texas Police Chiefs Association to continue investigating and reviewing its police force.
Yeah.
I will say Well, I mean, shit, it shouldn't have taken 5 months for them to do anything.
When you said
like
that, I got mad. Like, I genuinely was like, 5 months and it finally did something. And it's all that political circus of like, oh, like, well, we had to investigate. Really? So we all roughly work 40 hours a week in a full-time job. So you had how many dozens, hundreds of hours to figure this out, and it took you 5 months to do it? Like, it's just frustrating.
Well, yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to continue having these conversations, because if you don't hold them accountable and keep their names in the news, people unfortunately aren't motivated to do something, right?
Yeah.
It's much easier for them to half-ass an investigation and kind of move on rather than having to face.
Yeah,
exactly. Rather than having to like face the truth of like these people, these police officers, if you can even call them that, were, they're not of the grade for the job, right? They are not on par for people who need to be doing this job, and you need to completely, replace all that. But yeah, I mean, it's like, it's almost on one hand, you're like, okay, at least they're doing something, but it's like, shit, 5 months,
enough.
Man.
Yeah,
Come
it's
on.
not like the way I look at it is like, look, if they wanted to be cops, they need to be trained. So I don't know if this is a training issue, if this is a personal issue. Everything, like, it wasn't just like, oh, the guy in charge gave an order and it was bad. Everything they did from beginning to end to even after the end was bad. It wasn't good. It wasn't good enough. They just over and over just kept making the wrong decision that cost children their lives. It cost parents that were like, look, I'll grab my kid if I need to. And they were like, no, you can't do it. It's like, what are you guys doing? And then we see like how other police officers, it's just not like the first shooting we've had even that month. It's like this thing's happen. And you think these police officers would look at everything and be educated on like what to do, what not to do. Because in other places, they don't do that. Like when other shootings happen, the parents are like, I need to get in. Some police are like, screw it. Like, that's your kid. Get in there. Like, if you get shot, you're taking your risk. And as a parent, you know that. You're like, look, if the scales are, I could get shot saving my child, or my child could live. It's not a question. And so for me, it's like, I don't know how these cops, like, yes, they're like, oh, keep parents away and stuff. But at the end of the day, there's like sensible, reasonable kind of conclusions you have to come to in any position, especially as a cop. And if you're not smart enough or like just mentally fortitude, you don't have it to make that decision, you shouldn't be a cop. It's plain and simple.
Right.
So like, I just like, and the fact that these people are not fired, they're not suspended. They've been getting paid this whole time, which they don't get paid cheap. They're not making, working minimum wage. And yet they get to like, oh, they're reassigned. Reassigned to what? To a different division? Like, they're still out there being cops. Like, and I'm telling you, and it's all going to like, the thing I'll say about this is that if this gets worse, so if like one of the cops ends up shooting someone that like, or something happens with one of those cops and they find out that a cop that should have been fired led to another death, the whole department's going to blow up. It's just the way it is, And so like, for them to like brush them, we're like, oh, our bad that, we caused a bunch of children. We're all incompetent. We're like, hey, sorry. It's not enough. It's not enough. Like, suspended, step, like, no, these are fake political words they use to try to get you there and go like, hey, our bad. Please forget about this until another big shooting happens, and then we can look back. Like,
Right. And I mean, and if you wanted to see, like, at the end of the day, it's like, and most jobs have like, you have a meeting with your superior like once a year, right? And they give you like a progress report or some shit like that, right? Like, but if you watched the video of what these police officers were like not doing while they were in the school for an extended period of time, it's like none of them should be police officers, right? Because regardless if they're waiting for orders, like, you see kids are actively getting shot in there, and you have the opportunity to stop this, and nobody was like, fuck it, I don't care what the superior officer is saying, like, we're here, we have to go in and do what we were hired to do. And I understand people have families that they want to get back to, but at the same time, this is the job that you signed up for, right? Like, firefighters signed up for a job knowing that they might have to one day run into a fire in order to save a person. That is a part of the job, right? That's why these types of jobs, you sign up for them because you actually want to do good for the community. You understand that it's bigger than just yourself. And all of these police officers failed on that main component that it really takes to be a public servant.
Yeah, right. It's like, you don't see firefighters go, ooh, that fire? It's a little too hot. I'm going to wait for further instructions. It's like, no, it's not. Get in there. Like, this is your job.
Yeah.
It blows. I'm just like, and the frustration and pain that these parents are feeling that there's been no justice, which like,
right.
And talking about that, that the next subject we'll talk about with that kid in the McDonald's, but like it just bothers me that like no justice is served. And I think that's what, especially as Latinos, like we're very on that like justice has to be served. Like God will get you whatever, but like justice has to be there. We need that. We need to see that. And for this to happen, and this is like almost an entirely Latino community problem. It's frustrating, man. It's so like, damn, man. Like from beginning to end, it's just they're still to this day of disappointing us.
Right. Well, I mean, and to get to that story you were talking about, I mean, I think it's showing that police officers in general are not getting the training or vetting process as a whole that they should be. And the reality is I'm not shitting on all police officers everywhere, but those of you who are the good police officers, you should be just as outraged, if not more, because it gives you a bad name for when you're actually trying to do the right thing, and another story, sadly, that we saw was in San Antonio in Texas, right, where you had a police officer and he was fired immediately, which, to their credit, they didn't kind of wait for, the political shitstorm to happen for them to, grow a conscience. But he was fired after shooting a teenager while he was eating a burger in his car in McDonald's. And the kid was a Latino named Eric Cantu, a 17-year-old boy. He's in critical condition. He was shot multiple times by a police officer named James Brennan. And this happened while he was eating a burger in his car at a McDonald's parking lot, right? And the kid who was shot, Eric Cantu, was parked with a friend outside of the restaurant when the cop, who was responding to a completely unrelated disturbance call, opened the boy's door
without warning,
unprompted, and demanded that he exited the vehicle. So the kid, unsure of who the officer was or what he was trying to do, he decided to back his car up, put it in reverse, and he actually ended up hitting the officer in the leg with his door. And that's when the officer decided that he would open fire on this car as it was pulling away and ended up hitting this kid multiple times.
Not a taser either. Like, he shot, 8 times? He shot 4 times and then he paused and then shot 4 more times?
Right, Roy. And I mean, first and foremost, a police officer is not supposed to just start opening fire randomly at cars as they're driving, right? Like, you're putting other civilians at danger, especially you're in a McDonald's parking lot that there are people, walking around, driving around. Like, that is ridiculous. And that's why I think he got fired. They say he just completely broke protocol there. Yeah. And the officer was claiming that he recognized the car from a stop that they were trying to do a day or so ago where the car evaded the police, right? That was his sort of excuse. But it's like, man,
that's not an excuse though to execute someone. Like, that's the
exactly.
It's not like, oh, we saw this guy and I think I saw him the other day murder someone, so I couldn't wait any time. Like, what are you thinking? Like, you try to pull someone over, they get away from you, which we'll unpack that at another time, and then you think you know the car, and so without warning, allegedly, without prompt, you see this, you just rip open the door. And it's like, of course, this person's going to panic and they hit you. Oh, he got hit with the car to work going 5 miles an hour. Like, and he's like, oh, better kill this guy. And police officers are not executioners. This is not what they're paid for. This is protect and serve. This is I don't, and like we said, he was fired immediately because even the police union was like, nope, we're not doing this. Like, you need to get out of here. We're not doing this. This looks bad optically, whatever. And I think recently they just updated that he is getting, charged, because that was the next big step, is that yes, he is, he's got fired, cool, but there's nothing stopping him from getting a job in a different department. That's the whole part of police unions, that there's nothing stopping this guy from going to a different department or going to a different location and getting rehired and all this stuff. And it's and so they're press charges, and I think finally they officially, he turned himself in and he's going to face charges. And then the sad part is it depends whether that kid lives or dies. They're like, oh, he's facing anywhere between 3 to 10, maybe 15. If he dies, it jumps up.
Right.
And so now, it's just okay, so are they going to try to rush to see if they can get and it's just this horrible idea that they're waiting for a child to live or die to determine the punishment that shouldn't have been issued in the first place.
Right.
He shouldn't have been making this decision. I don't know, what kind of person does this? Listen,
it's a fucking cowboy, man. I don't think this guy thinks he's a fucking cowboy. That's the only way to explain it.
You don't even see this in mafia movies. At least there's some level of this boy. Imagine this: you're sitting in your car eating McDonald's for no reason at all, without any impromptu. Someone opens your door, you panic, you try to drive away, because who wouldn't try to drive away when someone's opening their car? And then they shoot you.
Right.
Not tasing, not he doesn't try to shoot the wheels. Doesn't try to shoot at the car to stop it. He shoots the kid. Like,
right. Well, but what's also crazy is the fact that, okay, maybe you think you recognize the car from some previous thing, right?
Yeah.
What the guy was trying to allegedly pull the same car over for previously was that the license plates didn't match the vehicle that they were on.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have a suspect
dealer
who's armed and dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, proceed with caution. It's allegedly somebody fucking switched the license plates and didn't register the vehicle that they're driving. Like, that's what you're approaching with this hostility. Like, it makes no sense to me. And again, it's like, what is the training that goes into being a police officer? Because again, this goes to fucking like vigilante justice, right? Like the cops are held to a certain system. There's a process for all of these things to avoid unnecessary shit like this happening. But sadly, they get a gun and a badge and they somehow think they are above the law, that they are literally hired. Yeah, like they think they make the law, even though they're literally hired to just enforce that law by the people that they are harassing, right? We're paying their salaries.
It feels like, honestly, like as a weird reference, like Judge Dredd, that old Sylvester Stallone movie. He's like, you broke the law. He's like, I am the law. Like, that's what it feels like. You broke the law. I am the law. I'll make whatever decisions I want to make because who's going to hold me accountable for it? And like, I don't get how someone could be like, this guy has $200 of parking tickets, whatever. I better murder him. When you open fire on anyone, you ever hold a gun and you point it at someone, it's to kill. You're not you're not some action star that can shoot him in the ankle and be like, all right, I took him out. Like, he shot to kill. He unloaded 8 bullets. What possesses someone to kill someone over a license plate switch?
Dude, it's once again, like, I don't see how people deny the fact that there is a glaring issue with the entirety of police in this country, right? And again, I'm not saying every single police officer is like a piece of shit like this guy is, but when you have so many cases like this one happening all over the country, right? So it's not an isolated incident that just Texas cops are garbage, and aren't trained properly. We see it all over the country. So it's obvious that there is a larger issue, a glaring issue when it comes to the training and vetting process of who is allowed to wear a gun and a badge in this country. And sadly, it feels like nobody gives a shit for the most part to correct it, because it's just like every single day we hear another story like this one.
And these are the stories we find out about, that's like the bigger worrisome.
Point.
It's like, these are the stories we find out about. How many, like one of those things of like, oh, these are how many police deaths. Well, how many times did a police officer shoot someone and they lived? And now they have to live through their life without a liver, without a spleen, with a broken back, with, never being able to walk again. Or it's like, because there are people who live through these things and cops are like, well, they live, so no big deal. Like,
Well, I mean, even the thing is, sadly, if it doesn't go viral on the internet, like for the most part, people aren't held accountable. Look at George Floyd, you know what I mean? Like that didn't become a thing until the video started making its rounds on the internet. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Elijah McClain, these things weren't happening right away where cops were being, or the people involved were being, held accountable right away. It wasn't until the public outcry became so loud that they could not deny it, And again, credit to the person in charge here for firing right away.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, the charges need to happen and it looks like they have. And this person needs to be held accountable. And hopefully this kid makes a recovery without it affecting his entire life. Yeah. But man, it's just a never ending kind of cycle of just really sad experience after experience.
Yeah. And I just want to just one little thing, because I remember it's bringing me all back to that. I forget her name, but there was the white girl, the content creator, where her boyfriend allegedly killed her and all that stuff. And like the family, remember? Yeah. And everyone's like, well, how come they don't do this for her? Because we have to we have to fight for our own. Like, it's as simple as that. It's like, if like the reason I've heard this from family but stuff like, oh, well, this this person, how come the Latinos are, well, what are you doing? Like, as a Latino community, we need to, like, it's cool when everyone jumps with us, but they won't jump with something that's not there. Like, the Latino community has this really big problem where we like stay quiet too much, because it's one of those like, put your heads down, don't talk about this. Like,
just be happy to be here.
Exactly, because it's that's how we were raised. It's one of those like, humility past humility. And it's like, we need to be loud about these things. We need to talk about these things and shout. And like, when we eventually talk about the LA City Council, it's like, people are loud and angry. And it's like, but the truth about that situation is, and not to like jump ahead, but the truth about everything she said is, that's what happens at every family gathering. We all have aunts and tias and tios and, abuelas and everything that say those things.
Right.
And it's one of those things that we don't call each other out on. And even if we do, we go, like, relax. Because like we just, it's this thing that we need to like hold each other accountable for and like really fight and shout when these things happen. Be like, look, regardless of whatever situation, we need to stand by these people, stand by each other. It doesn't matter whether you're lighter skin or darker skin, or you're more indigenous, less indigenous, or Afro-Latino or otherwise. It's like, we're Latinos. We need to stand together on this because we're the biggest minority in the United States. Like it's like, and now we're the majority in Texas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, like all of these big states that we're coming to be. And what are we doing with this?
Right.
Like, what are we doing with all this? It's power, straight and simple. It's power. Yeah. What are we doing with this power?
Yeah.
Making racist remarks. Like, this is,
Right. Well, you're hitting on a great point. I want to quickly fill people in who aren't familiar because I think this is a good conversation. So you're referencing this LA City Council President Nuri Martinez, and she resigned after leaked audio of her making racist comments. Yeah. And even Biden had to make a comment about this, and I think that's when she resigned, was after that. But behind closed doors, they were basically having a meeting about like the districting of Los Angeles, right? And it was getting heated, whatever it was. Yeah.
Inherently, it's about racism. It is
exactly.
Race. It's like, even outside of this, it is a race. It is a racial discussion.
Oh, at 100%. When you look at how Los Angeles is divided and what why certain areas are the way that they are is all race based upon history, right? But and this is another. And I thought was the other conversation was this gives you a bit more of an bird's eye view or open door view of like what the actual conversations are and how politically driven all of these decisions are. But she was making openly racist remarks, degrading some of her own colleagues, and was literally like giving everybody the business. Asian, black people got it,
Koreans,
Asians,
indigenous
Mexicans,
Latino,
right?
Everyone. Like she would have
everybody,
and you're just like, and to be clear, what she said was dumb and stupid. But if you think that she's the only politician, even in Los Angeles, talking about these things, she just got caught. Everyone is saying these things about each other. Yes. And like, that's the bigger problem. But the more at hand problem is, she felt way too, and the thing is like, there's one thing between saying like having like racist tendencies or whatever, but it's something else entirely to be this comfortable talking about racist stuff. Like she was way
in a room full of people. That means the environment was so safe for her that she felt okay saying
like
this shit.
That's what I'm saying. She felt so comfortable talking mad crap about everyone, and like she's like, and everyone's laughing and there, and it's just like y'all realize these are the people that are like you're supposed to be there for and support. Like this is like, to talk crap about other politicians is one thing, but to turn around and be like, all the blacks and all the indigenous and all the Koreans and all that, it's like, who do you like then? Like,
right. And specifically to your point, if we hone in on As a Latino, right? She is sort of showing you what I think happens to a lot of people in our community who believe that they can assimilate into white culture and they start drinking the Kool-Aid and they start thinking that they're above someone else, right? Because that is the old school colonizer mindset, right? It's like Christianity is superior to everybody else. That's why you all have to convert to us, right? And it becomes this pecking order. And then now we buy into it, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm Puerto Rican, so I'm a naturalized citizen. Mexicans are beneath me. I can make fun of Mexicans, right? We're all trying to find that pecking order, and it's a ridiculous thing that happens. And at the end of the day, what all of us need to realize, because you're mentioning like family members who have these tendencies, which I agree with, old world minds about colorism and things like that. Like they all have to realize is when shit hits the fan, we are not one of them. They will not treat us as equals if they do not have to. And that's what you all have to realize, and people like her who think that, they're rising the political ladder and all this kind of stuff. They will have no problem cutting you down if there is a white person that they feel can take your seat. You are not one of them. They invite you in the room, but trust me, they do not want to give you a real seat at the table. Yeah.
And she even said that as much in the thing. She's even like, those white guys, like, and like just the mentality of it is like, you can clearly tell, like, and I know people are having rallies today, in fact, and I know they were having a sense of indigenous and African Americans are like, hey, this isn't cool and stuff. But like, what they need to understand too is that like, this is a Latino problem. It's pretty much a politician problem. I guarantee you a lot of politicians anywhere you go will probably have the same exact point of views.
Sure.
But like the thing is too, that like I really like what upset me the most about like the rallies and stuff is that there's no like Latino that are like, hey, this is not okay. This is not okay for our community. You have indigenous Latinos and African Americans and Afro, but it's like there needs to be Latinos that stand up and go like, hey, this is not okay what she said. This is a systemic problem that's not only an American problem, it's a Latino problem no matter where you go. It stems all the way back to mestizos and everything that built on there where you're like a little bit European to a lot of European, and depending on how much you are or aren't, Latino, European, you're better than other people. And it's just like this whole issue of like labels and everything that we just can't, like, for her to just say this, it blows my mind that you could be for the people and really like, I'm Latino and I'm proud of Latinos, but you're representing Latinos. When you do these things, you represent our people. So now, guess what she did? A lot of people hate Latinos. Like straight up. After this, they're going to go, the Asian communities, even indigenous communities, Afro-Latinos, African Americans, are going to look and go, now, remember the last time we put a Latino in charge? All the Latinos got in a room and talk crap about us? So why, going forward, guess what's going to happen to all the other Latinos who aren't racist? They're going to get remembered for this. Yeah. And this is Los Angeles, a big city and everything. So she not only did something stupid, she ruined it for everyone.
Well, that's what, to your point, like, listen, I will celebrate our community. I will fight on behalf of our community till I'm blue in the face. But also, I will call out somebody from our community who does some fuckery because I understand that they are only setting us back. I'm not going to put the blinders on for you because you refuse to do the work, at the end of the day. So, I will call people out like her all day, and I agree. And it's a terrible thing that it gives all of us a bad name, especially there are already kind of a lot of underlying tensions that happen between the Black and brown community, even though we have so much common ground and we should be so united. There are a lot of experiences that people have had growing up, that will, taint the way they look at each other. And this is just adds on to that, especially when you talk about a place like Los Angeles, where you have a lot of history of Black and brown, right? And it's just only going to make all of us as a whole look bad. And if we don't, as a community, stand up and say this is not okay, then we're co-signing it, essentially. Yeah,
exactly. And that's so it just gets me so mad. Just like, because she doesn't realize that, like, especially nowadays, like the Latino movement is moving. We're finally getting like, I like this last Latino Heritage Month. Companies are finally, they like, a lot of them they stopped calling it Hispanic Heritage Month. They like, companies are moving forward. They're bringing more representation. And some of them are just baby stepping it forward. Like, I went to my nearby Barnes & Noble last year. The Barnes & Noble, they had one table in the Spanish-speaking section that was out of the way, and it was only Spanish-written books. I'm like, what about people who want to learn about Latino culture that aren't Latino? Like, that's kind of the whole point of the month, Like, for people that aren't, like, I literally was like, I want to talk to your manager about this, because one of the cashiers was like, yo, I agree with you, man. Talk to him. Yeah. And he was Latino. It blew my mind. I was like, the guy who's like, this is your month to celebrate your people. You're going to put it in a little, there's like 4 books. And I'm like, how come you don't do that for Black Heritage Month or Asian American Pacific, AAPI Month? How come you don't do this for LGBT? And so he goes, well, it's just like, this is, we don't sell many books. You don't sell many books because you don't put any books out. Like, in this year, they did better. They put it downstairs now. And there's like in English books about Latin culture. It's still a table with like 6 books. But I was like, hey, we're getting there. We're moving up. We're going forward. And like, we're finally getting things like McDonald's. Like, McDonald's is doing their Spotlight Dorado, which is Latino producers and everything. And Latinos. Like, we're doing so much for our community. And for her to do this, man, because it doesn't just set back Latinos. This is not a problem, Latinos. Like, I don't think a single Latino is surprised by anything she said. Really, honestly. You're hurt and shocked by it. But like, surprise is not quite the right word to say about this. At the same time, everyone else is. And it's kind of like flipping this let up and going, oh, Latinos like are angry and some of them are racist. And it's like, yes, we know. Trust me. When this whole Trump and everything happened, like, we know that people are like, I'm not Mexican, I'm American. It's like, I want the immigrants deported. Isn't your grandma that doesn't speak English living with you? Isn't she an illegal immigrant? Oh, that's different. She's a good one. And it's like this is like same kind of vibe. It's like, we need to be united in this. We need to be standing by this. And so for her to do this, it's not just, I'm sorry. She needs to apologize for all Latinos and everything she did to set us back, because this will set us back, especially in Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and let's quickly touch on an LA story, because I know you're from Los Angeles, obviously. You're also half Mexican. you have this conversation. It started a few weeks ago when Hailey Bieber was on TikTok and like showing off this new brownie glazed lip style that she has. Like she's selling a product or something. And I think Hailey Bieber is actually half Latina, but she doesn't ever claim it. Her mom is from South. I can't remember where exactly. Her mom is from South America, but it started this bigger conversation. I was reading an article on weareme2.com, so shout out to them. And they were talking about how the difference between appropriation and appreciation, right? And some people will make the argument, well, this is like appreciating other cultures, right?
No,
and
she didn't
then
say
others
chola
say
once, so
right. Well, there you go. That's a great point. Yeah, she didn't even acknowledge the history behind it. But also, the one thing that stuck with me about this article was that they were saying, which I agree and I've been saying, that Black and brown culture are looked at as ghetto until white people choose to adapt it, right? And like, I'll bring up one point. Like, I was watching the Real Housewives with my girlfriend, and it was like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, right? And you have you have obviously it's all white women with the exception of one on the show, and they're all wearing like streetwear clothing, right? And it's like sweatsuits, baggy, and this and that, and it's middle-aged white women. And I'm like, bro, like 10 years ago, they would have been like, that is so ghetto. But now it's because it's rich white ladies wearing it. All of a sudden, streetwear is acceptable, and wearing a sweatsuit outside of the gym is considered high fashion, right? And it's because the white people co-signed it. Now, I again, for you, I mean, Mexican culture, Los Angeles. I mean, that's very much more part of
And the thing is too, and it's like because I'm a substitute teacher when I'm not doing content creation and stuff. So I work at a predominantly Latino high school, and so I even joked to one of my students. So she had the chola lip line, and I'm like, "Oh, like Hailey Bieber, you're trying to do her,
right?"
And she looked at me with this like anger, like if she could shoot lasers, I would be dead. She looked at me with this ferocity, and I'm like, and she's like, "Mr. Torres, I hope you're kidding." And I'm like, no, I know it's cholas. I know that, Hailey Bieber didn't invent that. She's like, good.
Right.
And I noticed that after like that whole event, while it was crappy that she did that, a lot of Latinos started bringing it back. Because they're like, no, this is my culture. I'm going to take it back from you. You can't do this to us. And so for me, I'm like, it's sucky that she did it. But now there's a lot of teenage girls that are bringing it back that are like they were always kind of doing the trolling. They were all kind of doing it. But now it's spreading. So I'm like, hey, you're an idiot for doing this, but good job because now you're uniting Latinos. And I feel like that's the scariest people to unite on the planet. You unite angry Latinas for one cause. It's done. It's done. I don't think there's a single group of people on this planet that you want to upset less than Latinas. Because they were like, oh, we'll not only be sassy, we'll be very petty. You were not prepared for this. So for me, it's like, I'm like, yes, good job. So seeing this, because it's like, and she could have been like, Hailey Bieber could have been so simple and say like, hey, I saw this like chola makeup thing, or even when they called her out, she's like, yeah, she could have just said, look, I didn't know about it. I didn't know.
Right.
I thought I was originating it. My bad. I didn't know. I'll stop. Or like just donate. Like there's so many ways to go about like to just like backpedal. I'm sorry. Let me donate to this. Let me help you. Let me highlight chola makeup artists. It's not like they don't exist. It's not like, especially in this giant industry of social media, that like makeup people that are cholas don't exist. There's some that have millions of followers. There was a way to highlight this. And instead she kind of just like, well, hey, like, don't be angry.
Right. Well, you're touching on a note that any company should take, because they're always like, well, you guys get angry when we celebrate, but it's like, no, because you don't know how the fuck to actually do it properly, because you don't give a shit to actually look into it deep enough. And again, Hailey Bieber, her mother's Brazilian, but I mean, she's never claimed her Latinness that I've seen before that, so I wouldn't use that as a way to co-sign her doing this. But to your point, why not? Why would you just come about it and do it as if it's like something nobody's ever seen before? To your point, why not, if you're going to do an ad, have a chola makeup artist in the ad and have them talking about the history of it, the culture of it, right? And making it a celebration rather than you colonizing this thing and pretending like you're basically the Christopher Columbus of brown fucking glazed lip gloss, right? Like where you're just like, look at this new land I found, and it's like, well, actually, we've been living here for a while. Like, so, that's basically what these companies end up doing. Then they throw their hands up like, why are you guys upset? We're celebrating. It's like, no, you're stealing it. You're not giving anything back. And then you're not crediting people who have been doing this for so long. And then also acknowledging the history of people of actual, chola culture being looked down upon for these sort of quote unquote ghetto characteristics because they're representing their culture, right?
Yeah.
And it's not until whiteness comes along that, again, it's acceptable in the mainstream.
And this is what bothers me too, is like people don't realize that like this is one of the chola lip line, everything. That wasn't just a fashion. It was a statement. It was saying like they knew that this was going to hold them back from opportunities. They knew that people were going to judge them for this, and they did it anyways because their pride of who they are and what they stand for meant more than that. It's not just like what cholas wore it. If you don't think chola is like, because this is a lifestyle. Like if you don't think cholos and cholas are their own unique subculture of Latino, that like you don't understand them. You need to sit down and talk to them, because it's not just a lipstick style truth. This was something that people like they fought over, they died for this shit. Like these are gangsters, like, and they also idea that like cholas haven't, like they're not part of the gangster culture when it comes to, at least especially on the rise of it. Like this wasn't just a statement. This was something you fought over. This is something you fought for. So this whole idea that they're like, oh, it's just like, it's not a big deal. It's like, it was. Like legitimate. I know it sounds dramatic. People have died for this kind of things. Like this really means a lot to them, for them to be proud of this. It's like saying they invented tamales. It's like, okay, my abuela's now going to walk down the street. She's going to start whacking people, dude. Like there's certain things you have to do a bare minimum level of research on. And these multi-million-dollar companies, for her not to have anyone, like it just goes to show the kind of friends that she has, that no one around her was like, actually, Latinos have been doing that for like 30 years or so now. Right. Well, it's like Kendall Jenner having a tequila company. Like, give me a fucking break. Yeah.
But,
oh, God.
That's a whole nother conversation. Now, we hit a lot of these kind of heavier topics that we're rightfully passionate about. So I wanna kind of cleanse the palate a bit and move on to some positive stuff and celebrate some people from our community who are doing the work.
Yeah.
And we'll do that in our Mi Gente segment. But first, let's take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Mi Gente. All right, so let's first and foremost start, man, when it comes to the legend that is Jennifer Lopez and a really amazing thing that she is doing. She's partnering up here. So she is promising $14 billion in loans to Latina entrepreneurs, which is huge. I've mentioned this so many times about the Latina wage gap, how Latin women are at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to pay in this country. Now J.Lo is teaming up with nonprofit microfinance organization Grameen America to grant $14 billion in loans to 600,000 Latina entrepreneurs. And the good thing about this is that you don't need a credit score, you don't need collateral or business income to qualify for a loan under this program, because those are all things that end up being the barrier to entry for many people from our community, especially and hold them back. Yeah, and then according to their website, want to give a couple more details on it. They say that their max first time loan rounds will be $2,000, which isn't a lot of money. But then they say good standing members, so I guess those who keep up with their payments and things like that, will be given the opportunity to gain more money after 6 months. And last thing I'll say on this, because it always pisses me off, they are so quick to give us student loans. They have no problem with giving an 18-year-old $100,000 or so in student loan. Yeah, but you want $100,000 to start a business? Sorry, we can't do that for you, buddy. Right?
Yeah, I like, and the thing is too, like, there's two things that worry me. Is this so? Is this exclusively for Latinas? I'm assuming. How are they going to prove that? Because I feel like
that's a good point. Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of people that are like going to be testing that.
Right?
Yeah, like it's like one of those like, well, my grandpa was from Brazil back in the 40s. Right. He moved to Brazil when he was in the 40s. You're like, was he German before that? Was he from Germany before he moved there? Right. So it's one of those things that like, but aside from that, because everyone's going to game the system when they can. For me, it's like, $2,000 isn't a lot, but I can tell you just like seeing it firsthand, like, especially because I'm really big in the horror community. I love, going to horror conventions and supporting. And I can tell you firsthand, most of the people in this industry, like of horror and like smaller companies that are trying to make it, they're all Latinas, all of them. There's places that sell like this delicious homemade chamoy that like they, like candies and stuff. And it's just her and her husband. And they literally sold it. They went to a convention. They sold out in the first 3 hours and they had booked the thing for the whole weekend. They're like, it's just us. We can't hire anyone. Like, We made our money
Right.
back. Cool. But like, we don't have the time to go back and make more enough for tomorrow.
Right.
So like, there's a lot of these companies, like a lot of the people running the conventions too are Latinas. A lot of these shirt people, they make soaps and shirts and all these like Latin themed stuff and cookies and sweets and all this stuff. And they're all Latinas. And I can tell you that like, yeah, 2000 not a lot, but I'm sure a lot of them would be able to use that well and turn around and give that investment and keep working their way up to more investments. Because Latinos, man, it's that ambition to them that like they just don't stop when it comes to like wanting more, because our whole culture of Latinas has not been there for that. A lot of it's like, you know, your abuela stay home, tamales, whatever. You're like, I mean, nowadays, how many TikToks have you seen about the man about to serve himself food when he's at his girlfriend or wife's families, you know? And then it's a whole big deal, or his family, you know, it's everything is like, no, your girlfriend serves you. You know, it's like, and that's the thing is that Latinas are, that's what I tell my students too. I'm like, Latinas, like, are you, who wants to be a stay-at-home mom? If you do, that's no problem. But who wants to go out there and get a job? And they're like, me. All of us. Yeah. And I'm like, did your grandmas do that? Do any of your moms? They're like, no. I'm like, do they want to do that? No. And I'm like, but you do, right? They're like, yeah. So like a lot of these, especially these younger Latinas and teenagers and young adults, man, they're like, there's this wave coming, man. And I think this is really going to help. So I really like, even as much money as it is, I don't think Jennifer Lopez realizes how much she's going to be changing the future with this one. Because this really is, even $2,000, man, sometimes that's all you need to just like get your name out there, to get like, I know like a lot of like convention spots are like, oh, they're $200. And these people have these stories, they have these things, but they don't have that $200 to give because it's too much of it's too much of a bet. So even with this money, man, I think this is really going to put forward. And I think from this, we're going to see this in like 5, 10, 15 years. There's going to be a lot of Latina businesses that really use this. And Jennifer Lopez is, I mean, every freaking speech that's going to be there. You know, this is one step I can guarantee you. There's film studios that are smaller in Hollywood that are run by Latinas, and everyone's going to be using this, man. I can really tell you that I have nothing but thanks and appreciation and love for J.Lo for this, because really, you look back 20 years from Jenny on the Block. I guess it's been more than that now. You know, 25 years from Jenny on the Block to now, it's like she took something, she's giving back, and that's what Latinos need to do for each other. And for her to do this, man, I have, sorry for the long-winded thing, but I just really appreciate this up close and personal to just everything I see in my life in Los Angeles and the nearby areas and stuff. Like, I can see these Latinos are fighting and fighting, and they just need that little bit of help. And with this, man, they're going to get it. So it's, I love it so much.
No, I think it's so well said. I mean, especially, you know, I one thing I'm grateful for, and we hopefully keep pushing it, is breaking the chains of like that toxic masculinity that you kind of touched upon, you know? And yeah, I think to your point, 2,000 on its head doesn't seem like a lot of money, but that might be what you need, like you said, to press your first run of shirts and get that booth, and then you sell out and you've doubled your money at that point, right? Like you just need something to start going, which is incredible. And I mean, in another story, I want to quickly touch on another Latina who busted her ass to make something of herself and is, you know, an inspiration. You have a 27-year-old Mexican-born woman going to space. She's the first Mexican-born woman going to space. She moved to the U.S. when she was just 7 years old. She worked at fucking McDonald's. Like, she busted her ass, 27. She's an astronaut and an engineer and going to space, firstborn Mexican woman. You just love to see these sort of barriers being broken, man.
Yeah, honestly, like seeing this, and like, I remember when this was first announced, how many little Latinas, and like I was telling you, like, I work at a school, I get to see this up close and personal and tell the students this, and to see it, like, and it's like I said, it's predominantly Latino, so see a lot of Latinas see like, oh, I can go to space, I can be an astronaut, and like, this is what I tell them too, because you always got to think about teenagers. You go, look at this, and she's making money. She's making good money. The Latinos are like, wait. I can have a smart math engineering job and get paid a lot of money. Like, yes. I was like, you know how many dogs you can get with that? And they're like, oh, so many little, you know. And it's just like, I you know, really appealing to these students and stuff. Like, and like, I love appealing to my students. And it makes it easier when there's other Latinos breaking borders and they're breaking forward into this like new industry and stuff that like, how many times have we been going to space? How many? And this is the first time a Latina is doing this. So it's like, it goes to show you, it's never too late to break the game, you know, to break through that ceiling. It's never too late. Latinos, statistically, we're a little slower than everyone, but we're always moving up. We're doing, our grandparents did better than their grandparents and their grandparents. We're doing better than our parents. Our kids will do better than us. And we're slowly moving up that hill. And it's going to take a while, but we're moving up and we're doing it together. And so to see her do this, man, I I really just like it's another thing. Like just it's chill. I don't think this girl realized that she's not just doing this for herself. She's doing it for so many people. And I know that's like maybe not fair to her to put all of this on her shoulders and say, hey, you're not just by yourself. You're representing millions of Latinos who want to do what you do, but they're scared or they've been told no, or they've been told that they can't do this. Right. So to me, it's like, damn, it's crazy that we're finally making it, you know? So I love it.
I mean, that sometimes that little inspiration is all somebody needs to recognize that they have options out there in this world, you know? And on that same token, you know, quickly touching on this new cast member for SNL, right? Yeah. Marcelo Hernandez, who is a self-professed little Cuban Dominican boy from Miami. And his latest sketch that he did for NBC is like going crazy on the internet. He sat down doing their iconic like weekend update that the Colin Jost hosts. But to me, it's great that they have a Cuban Dominican person representing on the show, right? That should be the norm. And unfortunately, it hasn't been in the past, but, you know, we could celebrate that. But to me, what I loved about it was he was his authentic self. He was making jokes from the perspective of a Latino, right? And people were vibing with it. And that, to me, is what is important. He was given the ability to show up authentically. He decided to show up authentically and proving a point that, you know, you don't have to necessarily be of that culture to understand or appreciate it, right? Because that's often Hollywood's argument is that, oh, well, you know, a Latin story isn't going to, you know, do well with the general public, right? They can't relate to it. And people, it's annoying. And people like him, like Marcelo, you know, showing up there, making his jokes centered around his culture and it killing and people really recognizing it is so incredible, again, because it shows you that our stories can be told to a mass audience and that we aren't just some fucking little niche, you know, audience that just has to be stuck somewhere on like HBO Plus or Latino or something like that, you know?
I love it too, because like it reminds me of like when Jenna Ortega, when she's Wednesday Addams and her brother's a Latino actor, her father in the show is a Latino actor, their mother's not, but like that's still a big cast. And even the uncle, Fred Armisen, I think he's half Latino, I think. So it's like this and this is coming from Tim Burton, who, let's be real here, hasn't the better. I don't think he's ever casted a Latino in the almost 40 years he's been doing filmmaking. But for him to do this is one thing, and I appreciate that. But the first teaser announcement for Wednesday Addams, Jenna Ortega's right there on the camera in the West End. She goes, to be able to bring a Latino representation to this. I just started crying. I was like, because it's not just like they know what they're doing, but it was for her to be like, no, I'm going to say what needs to be said, that I'm a Latino. I'm proud of being Latino and I'm bringing that inspiration. And that's part of my character, but it's not my entire character's identity.
Sure.
And that's the big important thing. And that's what I love. And like, when it comes to Latinos, I don't know how many times I've talked to producers and writers and all these people working in the industry, and the same thing is like, we want to have a Latino character who that's not their character. It's just part of their identity, but it's not their whole identity. And we want someone who is an American-based Latino. Every Latino in every movie and show, they got to have the accent. They got to come from overseas. You know, they got to come from Latin America. They got to be from all these places, usually Mexico or Puerto Rico. Right. And it's like half the time, they're not even from there. Like, so it's like, you know, it's like, or God forbid they have us play Spaniards or vice versa. But it's like, so for have him do this, to be like, look, I'm Latino, I'm bringing that to my identity, but I'm still funny. Okay, I am funny even without it, but it adds this extra bit of identity that makes me unique. Yeah. So for him to do that, for Jenna Ortega, for all of these up and coming actors to be like, look, I'm Latino and I'm proud of it, right? Right. And I'm also talented. I'm not getting this because of this. It's like, which I don't think anyone's getting jobs just solely because they're Latino. But you know, but it's definitely adds on to it, and it's really like becoming this new thing that I'm very proud of him for doing that. Because how many times have we seen people take the opposite way? You know, like they'll change their name, they'll do all these things. Look at Oscar Isaac. I had this discussion. I love Oscar Isaac. That man is gorgeous, and I love him. He's a talented actor. But how many times has that man played a white man versus how many times has he played a Latino? He changed his name, like to be white, because he was like, I'm not getting jobs as a Latino. I'm going to pretend to be a white guy and I'll try to not, you know, lay it on too much. And so it's like, we're going from that to this, where people can be proud of the Latino heritage, that they can push forward with it. So go him for on SNL. I really hope he has a bright future with everything. All these young and coming Latinos, man, they're really opening the door, and I really love it, man.
Absolutely. Anybody that is unafraid to be themselves, unapologetically authentic, I think is incredible.
Agreed.
And last thing I wanna bring up. I mean, it's coming from a darker background here, but it is an important moment of recognition of somebody's story. Now we've all heard the story of Vanessa Guillen. She was the Army specialist who was murdered by a fellow soldier
Yeah.
at Fort Hood in Texas. But last week she was actually honored with a portion of Harris County's Highway 3. They renamed it after her name, which is incredible to, I'm sure to give some sort of peace to her family that her story won't be forgotten.
Yeah.
And it's also been announced that Netflix is actually going to be airing a documentary on her life and her death titled I Am Vanessa Guillen, and that'll be available on November 17th. On that highway, they also had 20 muralists create an original piece in honor to commemorate every year of her 20-year long life. It's too short.
Jesus.
But it's a tragedy. Obviously, there are a lot of people who still need to be held accountable. The superiors at the Army who ignored, some of her cries before she went missing and eventually murdered. But I think that, to make sure that somebody's name is immortalized and that it wasn't, her death wasn't in vain, that hopefully this continues to elevate and bring attention to anybody who may have a similar story to hers in the military, right? And in the documentary, I quickly read a little bit about how the family was talking about how difficult it is to take on something like the military, right?
Yeah.
And to that's just unheard of, but her name being immortalized like this, hopefully, leads people to understand that they will be held accountable, and we're not just going to idly sit back and allow these people to be forgotten.
Yeah, because it's not like the thing is too is like they have to remember that this isn't just a Latina issue. This isn't just like this happens to a lot of women. Oh,
Yeah.
Did you hear that thunder?
Oh, wow.
Los Angeles for you. It was 78 degrees yesterday. Now there's thunder. Yeah, so it's like, it's not just a Latino issue. A lot of women, I mean, statistically speaking, if you're a woman and you join the military, there's a much higher chance that you're going to be SA'd than if you were not in the military. So it's like, it's not just bringing an issue to this as a Latino problem. It's a bringing an issue to anyone, no matter what. I mean, we're America. Like, no one is above anything. Everyone should be held accountable. It doesn't matter if you're the military. It doesn't matter if you're to me, what I would, if I was in the military, I would be absolutely jumping forward to help this case, because the last thing from a purely financial point of view that you would want is to people not go to the military. The last thing you'd want is for them to have a documentary come out and say women don't go to the military. Because so as a military, I don't know why the military wouldn't be open and honest and forward with this whole investigation. Be like, this looks really bad. We'd rather you think that there's a few bad apples than the whole tree is spoiled. So for me, it doesn't make any sense that the military would, just from a purely morally messed up but financial point of view, it doesn't make any sense why the military wouldn't they were just hoping, brown girl gets murdered, no big deal, let's move on past. It's happened before, no big, and they're like, no, screw you, we're not letting this go.
Yeah, it's sadly the American way is we'll just pretend like something didn't happen and everybody will forget about it, right? But yeah, I think to your point that should be the case. And again, I mean, she's going to get her story out there, rightfully so, and hopefully it does sort of scare some of these powers that be to say we need to hold people accountable, or we are going to lose the asset that we need, which is people signing up for the military. Like you said. So, man, just a terrible story, but again, I'm glad to see
a lesson
that
that
it's
has to be
not
learned
just
for everyone.
Exactly.
For everyone.
And that her story won't be forgotten, and that she'll be forever immortalized in this way. We've gotten through a lot today. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit because I know you are the guy who focuses in on a lot of pop culture in the world of movies and comic book stuff and all these things. And it's a wheelhouse that I'm not super always on the front lines with. So I'm curious, what is a story for you that is kind of at the front of your head that you feel needs to be talked about a little bit more in that world?
Yeah. So I could go on a rant for this, and I've already gotten in trouble for this, but I will say this. Look, when it comes to Latino representation in pop culture, it's usually not good. Just flat out, it's just not good. It's never good enough. The stuff that they do is really there's no care done with it, right? And I got a big video, and I know for certain that Marvel Studios actually watched the video. but I'll go on to that another day. But it's like pretty much what happened. I was like, look, DC is making a movie, Blue Beetle, with Jaime Reyes, and he is a Latino actor, a Latino director, a Latino writer, and a Latino producer. It's the first superhero Latino movie. Marvel has made how many movies, and we still don't have him? Even Sony. Bad Bunny went to Sony. He's like, look, I love wrestling. I know you got superheroes. What can you do for me? And they're like, we have one Latino that's not Spider-Man, and he's a luchador. He was in 2 issues. And he's like, I'll do it. I'll take it. And then what happens? They finally announced the writer and directors for that. And guess what? Both Latinos. And I think the writer or the director for the El Muerto movie that Bad Bunny is doing is the same writer and director for the Blue Beetle movie. So they're like, hey, good job on Blue Beetle. We're grabbing you now to do our Latino movie. But Marvel. So, and like, look, look, if you love Venom and Morbius, cool. I thought they were awful movies. But at the end of the day, like, this is Sony that doesn't seem to have it together. DC is notorious for not having it together. And yet they're doing a Latino superhero movie. Sony is doing a Latino superhero movie. But Marvel seemingly has no plans. And when they do give us Latinos, it's so pathetically bad. Like, they introduced Joaquin Torres in The New Falcon and Winter Soldier, right? And he's a Latino guy. He's supposed to be the next Falcon. And you think, okay, this is a TV show. This is like 8 episodes or 6 episodes, 1 hour long. Like, we got time to develop this character. No development for that character. It literally ends with like, here's the wings. They're broken, but see you in the future. And it's like that's what we get. And then we go to Moon Knight, where Oscar Isaac, they don't bother changing his name. He's Mark Spector. And, he has a British accent half the TV show. And you're just like, there's little things that I'm like, just because he's the actor is Latino doesn't mean the character is. And they're like, no, of course he's all the actors in the show were Latinos that were his family. And like, okay, but did you see what they were eating when they made a family gathering? The mom was on the barbecue and she was making shish kebabs. Show me a Latino family where the mom's on the barbecue and making shish kebabs. No, they're not Latino. I'm sorry. That's just not how that works. It's not a thing. And if someone, you just don't know Latino culture. And it's because there was no Latino writers, there were no Latino directors, anyone involved in that except for Oscar Isaac. And then at the end, he's whistling. And when he's like the violent, meanest version of Moon Knight, that's the Latino. And I'm like, of course, the nice sweetheart is when he's pretending to be a white British guy. But the violent, mean, sadistic one only speaks in Spanish. And you're like, come on. And this is Oscar Isaac, who, like we just said earlier, is notorious for playing white characters. So it's like, and then you move forward to, we have Miss America, America Chavez. She's in Doctor Strange too. They have that one scene in the beginning where she's speaking Spanish. And it really doesn't make any sense why she would speak Spanish at all, because it's clear she prefers to speak English to this character. And then like, they even, when she's on the red carpet, they're like, tell us about Miss America. And she's like, well, she's an alien. And I'm like, are you going to say Latina at any point? And she lists off verb after verb. She's strong. She's talented. She's powerful. She's, and are you going to say Latina? Are you going to say Latina? Nope, doesn't say Latina. And they even have her jacket, right? Miss America from the comics is a notoriously, she looks Afro Latina and she's from Puerto Rico. She's very proud of her Puerto Rican heritage. And because they cast a Mexican actress who's not Afro Latina, they then switch. They're like, well, we're going to talk about like Day of the Dead. So we put like a Day of the Dead sugar scroll on her jacket. And if you watch the behind the scenes for this, they were going to put her entire back was going to be a Day of the Dead like tribute. Why? Is that all that you think Mexican culture is? That's like when you think of Mexico, Day of the Dead, nothing else. It has nothing to do with her character. She's not attached to that holiday. It doesn't make any sense. So it's like one of those things of like, you're brown, all brown people are the same. And then we get to Werewolf by Night, where like it's the main character, and this is not spoilers for if you guys haven't seen it. Werewolf by Night, he's got like dark eyeshadow and there's white dots on his face. And it looks like a skull. And in the brief spoiler in the show, they're like, the one guy's like, I like your makeup. And he goes, oh, it's a tribute to my ancestry. He doesn't go more than that. Doesn't say more than tribute to your ancestry. And if you're watching that movie, you just kind of go, what ancestry? And his name's Jack Russell in the movie. A Latino named Jack. They didn't even bother changing it. They're like, oh, his name's Jack Russell. You're like, okay, so a blue-eyed Latino with very light skin is named Jack. And that's supposed to be, and I looked into it, I'm like, oh, it's a sugar skull. And I was like, what Latinos half-ass a sugar skull, honestly. Like, especially for Day of the Dead, when these people go full out, like, you will never have anyone half-ass a Day of the Dead Sugar Skull. And to me, it just shows that they don't care. They don't do the research. They don't know these things. They're just like, oh, like, he's Latino, but we don't actually want people to think he's Latino. And so for me, it's just like, how is it that these other film studios like Sony and DC who do not have it together are making Latino movies? And Marvel, we're still waiting. And we're getting Namor, which is cool. He's indigenous Latino, super cool. But he's the villain. Yeah. And it's like, and in a movie where it's indigenous Latinos versus Africans. So it's black versus brown. And it's like, I see this stuff and I'm just like, when are we going to get it? Because when you look at Marvel Studios, especially who really like prides themselves on diversity, when they made the Eternals, they're like, hey, we have our first gay character, everyone. Like we have a gay character. He's going to kiss on screen. When they made Captain Marvel, our first female. When they made Black Panther and Shang-Chi, we have our first Asian. We hired an Asian writer, Asian director, black writer. And Latinos are sitting there going, any news for us? You're going to give some of that to us? Because even if they reveal that these characters are Latino, they didn't advertise them as such. Yeah. They didn't say that this is. Right. So to me, it's like, no, I'll acknowledge they have Latino superheroes when they do. Because where are they? If this was anyone else, they go, Shang-Chi is an Asian hero. And they get Simu Liu. And he's like, I love being an Asian superhero. Where is that? They come on stage, they say something in Spanish, and like, mi Dios. And everyone's like, woo! And that's it. Right. It's not reflected in the characters. It's not reflected in the story. And it's like, stop giving us scraps. And my wife tells me, it's
kind of, it's like eerily similar to the way politicians view Latinos. Yeah. They think they can just kind of throw a couple quick like catchphrases at us and like, oh my God, now we're on board with them, you know? And I think to your point, you know, I'm not well versed in all of it, but it just sounds like they're doing the bare minimum just to be able to kind of like cover their ass. If somebody's like, hey, you're not doing anything for Latino. Hey, but we like, you know, gave a little nod to the sugar skull to his ancestors. But like, they're obviously not doing it because they're interested in celebrating the culture. Yeah. They're just doing it because they understand they probably have to do a bare minimum to not get quote unquote canceled in this, you know, woke culture that we live in.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, that's just my little, for those out there listening that love pop culture and superheroes, that's just my little rant. It's like, you could be doing better. You should be doing better. You know you should be doing better, especially because their president is a Latina, born and raised in Latin America. So I'm like, y'all should be doing better. This is unacceptable. But it's like, but my problem is how I say things, right? Like, I guess that's a thing with Latinos in general. It's how we say things. We can't be loud and angry because then we're just an angry brown man. You know, stereotype, we have to be, you know, like look at a lot of Latino superheroes, fire, angry, passion, you know. It's like, that's our thing that we're too angry. So it's like, I have to come at this a little bit different. I can't just be like, oh, Marvel, you're racist, which that's what I did. But, you know, some of the things of like, and especially living in Hollywood, you know, it's like, it's not just, I don't think people understand when it's like, when a Latino or anyone says like, hey, Marvel is racist and I'm holding them accountable, there's repercussions for that as a content creator, as everything, you know? It's like, I used to go to red carpets for Marvel Studios. I don't anymore. I used to, but like, I go to other red carpets for other companies, not for Marvel Studios anymore. So it's like one of those things of, I know that they listen. There's marketing, everything. And it's like me putting my like reputation, everything on the line to say this. It's like, we have to, Latinos, we have to be aware of this. It's like, look, we're going to say something and y'all have to be aware that like, this isn't me just being angry. I'm going to get in trouble for this. You know, it's like, but it has to be said, because if I'm not going to say it, who is? There's a bunch of other Latino content creators got way more followers than me. They're not going to say this. You know, it's just what it is. So it's like, look, I don't have millions of followers, but I have enough to be noticed and to go to places. And if I'm not going to do this, someone else has to, you know, and that's why I love your podcast, because you're not afraid to say these things. You're just like, look, there's injustice. We need to talk about this because it's what it is. And if you're not doing this, who is, you know?
Right. Well, I respect that, because it's, you know, at the end of the day, I always say, like, what's the point of having a platform if you're not using it for the benefit of something, right? Or someone, if you're not using it to advocate on behalf of people who don't have their voice heard, you know? Yep. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure getting invited to all of the Marvel red carpets are a lot of fun, you know, hypothetically, but, you know, what
not at the
in
cost
the long
of me
run,
saying nothing,
right?
You know,
right? Exactly. That is far more important. You know, your overall purpose and work while you're doing it is always more important. So I respect that for sure. So I mean, listen, man, I always love getting your perspective. Always love having you on the show. I'm sure we'll do it again.
Thank you.
At some point soon, hopefully. where can people follow you? I know you're super active, especially on TikTok and all that kind of stuff, but where can people follow you and check out more of your content?
Yeah, so I'm the Storytime Guy, one word, on TikTok, Instagram. I'm having a huge ballooning. I've like tripled my followers on Instagram in the last week because few videos went viral, and now I have a bunch of I have like 10,000 followers. I went from like 2 to 10.
Nice.
So Instagram, everything I post on TikTok is on Instagram. Plus on Instagram, I post like pictures and updates and everything. So really, honestly, Instagram is a great place to find me. TikTok, if you want more videos and stuff like that. And if you ever want to email me, I'm storytimeguybiz@gmail.com. Email me questions. If you have fairy tales, I do Latino representation, Latino stories, Aztec culture, mythology, but everything in the world. I love talking about all cultures, all places. Just go to any of my profiles, follow the link. I have books, I have recommendations for stuff. Really, honestly, I love doing this because I'm learning with you guys. I get to share this with you guys. I get to read stories and be excited and then make these videos and tell you guys like, hey, this is fun. Look at the culture that we share. We're not just Latinos. This is a history. What is the difference between Hispanic and Latino? Does it matter? Like this kind of stuff. This is open windows for me. If you ever need to message me, I'm there on Instagram. I respond to everyone. So please, yes, the Storytime Guy, follow me. Let's be friends. Share things with me. I love when you guys share things with me. When I do a video and you're like, hey, did you know about this Latino monster from Venezuela? I feel like not a lot of people talk about Venezuela. I'm like, yes, share. I'll make a video on it, man. So really, honestly, that's where to find me. That's where to really it's really a back and forth between me and my audience. I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate being on this podcast, man. This has been so wonderful.
Of course, my dude. Always good seeing you, man. And we'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Man, big shout out to my guy, Matt, the Storytime Guy, for hopping on today's show. Always enjoy hearing his perspective, and I always love having somebody on the show who is into different things that I'm not necessarily like super well versed on, like the comic book stuff and a lot of those pop culture references for movies. I appreciate it, but it's not something I dive deep into. But I know there are some of y'all who are really into that and have mentioned it to me in the past. So I love having him on to kind of either scratch that itch for you or to put some of us like myself onto some game. I'm definitely going to check out some of those things he was referencing. No Ask a Gringo segment today. We ran a little bit long, but quickly, man, let's tie all we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for Conclusion Stew.
So, I'll quickly touch on, Uvalde and this San Antonio shooting with the police force. I think it's just more evidence that the people who are being given these badges and these guns and literally the power to take someone's life or destroy someone's life, they are not properly trained and properly vetted, and it's obvious these are just two cases, but we see them all too much. It's sad that I can honestly say I've become like desensitized to some of these shootings. Like when I was researching stories for today's show, I was considering cutting that San Antonio shooting story because it just seemed like another story about a police shooting, and I had to check myself that it was just like, damn, I'm becoming desensitized to this because it's so fucking common. It's sad. And I don't have an answer. I wish I did. I think obviously midterms are coming up and then, the bigger elections again in 2 years. Hopefully we can press these politicians to begin to start passing some sort of legislature that holds these police accountable, but also has a stricter vetting system, to Matt's point, where these guys get fired and they don't get charged, they can just go and work at some other police precinct, in some other area, and be given a badge and a gun again, so those are things that need to be corrected and stopped for sure. And man, this LA City Council President, Nuria Martinez, who resigned after making racist comments, I love that conversation with Matt about holding ourselves accountable, right? Like, listen, like I said, I celebrate our community till I'm blue in the face, but at the same time, I will call out our bullshit as well because it's imperative for us to repair that if we want to evolve and move forward and empower ourselves as a culture and a community. So, all of that nonsense that we hear, the old world racism from many people in our community, the colorism, whatever it may be, I've said this a million times, it has no place in our culture. And I love that our generation is really taking a stance against that. And it starts with checking your family members, but also holding people out in the public accountable as well when it comes to those holding power and standing up against them, be it protesting and social media demands for their resignation, things like that are all really important for us to participate in. Now, this chola appropriation, the Hailey Bieber thing, I think, again, that article on wearemetoo.com was really powerful. And I appreciate the conversation about, how something becomes in style once a white woman approves it, right? And they were talking about that lip thing. And I mentioned how, Black and brown culture are considered ghetto until white people adapt it, be it streetwear and all these different things. It's just, man, the whitewashing of America continues. And unfortunately, these big companies only pretend to actually give a shit, and they don't have people in place who, are pointing out their flaws, and you can say, oh, this is appreciation of chola culture. To Matt's point, it's not. Why wouldn't you honor then actual cholas from the community to showcase that you're celebrating their culture? I understand that we're all going to adapt different fashion and things like that from various cultures and music, whatever it may be. But when you are in the public eye, you have a large platform, and you are taking something that is so unique to a specific community and one that has been marginalized and judged for that same exact thing that you're now being celebrated for. It's important to make sure that you have the representation and that you are uplifting the community as you are trying to profit off of it. I understand that that's we live in a capitalist society, and business is business, but you should also be celebrating and lifting up the community if you're going to be profiting off of something that they invented, essentially, right? Quickly now with the positive stuff, a great week for positive things. Shout out to J.Lo for this partnership, doing loans for Latina entrepreneurs. I think it's so huge. And as Matt was saying, man, I just think we're in for this incredible kind of wave of Latina entrepreneurs. And like he said, I don't think J.Lo recognizes like how huge this potentially is going to be in the lives that it will change. And it's a beautiful thing to see, especially in a world, once again, where they have no problem giving us tens of thousands of dollars for student loan debt, but don't want to give us business loans. And man, first Mexican woman to ever go out into space. Katia Echazarreta, and I'm sorry if I butchered your name. I forgot to mention it earlier in the thing, but man, beautiful. Went from working at McDonald's to being an engineer and astronaut going to space. Come on now, that's beautiful. First Mexican-born woman to go to space is beautiful. SNL, the new cast member Marcelo Hernandez, doing a service and a Latin monologue, Latin kind of humor based upon his own culture, and it's being celebrated in this way and making its rounds on the internet, going viral. I think shows you the power of our culture and that it can be universal. That funny is funny regardless of who it's coming from, And lastly, Vanessa Guillen, which is a horrible story of a woman, man, whose life was taken far too soon at 20 years old at Fort Hood in Texas. But to see her name immortalized here on a highway in Texas, as well as a documentary about her life, drawing more and more attention to this issue. Like Matt was saying, sexual assault being in the military is such a prominent thing, and it's something that needs to be spoken about. And if the military is not going to hold themselves accountable, we as citizens need to do our part to make sure these stories are being told. And that's what this is. So, God bless her family. And it's a beautiful thing to see her immortalized in this way. But with that said, that's it for today's show. Man, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Like, subscribe, rate this, wherever you listen. I appreciate you. Dramos.com if you want to pick up some merch. We got some Gringo hats. We got the Dramos Tribe hat and a bunch of cool things. I got some Bad Bunny candles, actually, that we got in that are really dope. You should check out. Dramos.com. You'll see that link for a merch and speaking engagements. If you have a company or a school, you want me to come talk to you. And man, with that said, catch y'all on Tuesday for a brand new episode. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.